Now, the debate over funding a wall at the U.S.-Mexico border comes as President Trump marks his 2 years in office. Where do things stand at this point? David Smith is the Washington bureau chief with the Guardian newspaper. David, welcome to our studio.
Thank you.
2 years into the office, let's begin with the shutdown. What do you think of President Trump's new shutdown proposal?
I think it was dead on arrival. It was never going to convince Democrats. In fact, they even came out against it before he made his address from the White House, first and foremost because he's still pushing for $5.7 billion to help build a wall on the US-Mexico border. Democrats have said repeatedly that is a non-starter. But also what he was offering was principally to extend protections for the so-called dreamers, young immigrants brought to America as children who remain undocumented. Democrats say this is a problem of his own making. He was the one who stripped away those protections during the first 2 years of his administration. And so, as you heard there, they regard it as just really holding the government to hostage, and really is no indication of any movement on either side.
In the midst of all these, President Trump's poll numbers are down as he marks 2 years in office. How do you see the shutdown factor into this?
The polling data so far shows that it's affecting him worse than the Democrats. He is taking most of the blame for this. That's despite a concerted effort by the White House and his allies in conservative media, such as Fox News, to really pump out a message that it's democratic intransigence and that the security of the nation depends on this. So I think it is affecting him negatively. However, among his base, who one can estimate maybe about a third of the country, the people who turn out at the rallies, who remain loyal, I think they'll be standing by him. They will regard him as taking a stand for security.
And 2 years into office, how do you think President Trump delivered on his promise 2 years ago to put America first?
It's complicated, I think. Yes, he has, as he sees it, certainly in terms of rhetoric, in terms of shaking up the international order, challenging NATO to pay more, for example. But the foreign policy has been very confusing. And whether it's North Korea, relations with China, and in particular with Western allies, I think the main criticism of him would be that he's really embraced authoritarians and undermined America's old allies in the West. And actually, the critics would say that is not putting America first, because it's been very destabilizing. Europe feels it can no longer rely on the US, and therefore actually it's undermining everyone's interests.
Is that a sentiment back in Britain, where US and the UK seems to have enjoyed a special relationship for so many decades, that President Trump is undermining this relationship to some extent?
Yes, I think probably a majority of Britons are very skeptical of the Trump administration. They see some parallels with their own troubles with Brexit, perhaps. We've seen famous relationships between Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, or between Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. It hasn't quite worked out that way with Donald Trump and Theresa May, and the reports that he's been critical of her to her face, and certainly undermined her attempts on Brexit. I think Britain, along with the rest of the other European countries, are sometimes just baffled by America's posture, and wondering why he's sometimes been so full of praise for the leader of the Philippines, the leader of China, the leader of North Korea, and others who are seen as against Western interests. And of course, above all, Vladimir Putin of Russia. Relations between Britain and Russia are very tense. So they're wondering, why is Trump so friendly with Putin?
David Smith, Washington bureau chief with the Guardian newspaper. Thank you so much.
Thank you.